Okay, good morning, party people. It is Monday, October 23rd. Happy Monday. Okay, so today in our reading, we are reading Exodus 17:18. Now we're back in the Old Testament. We were in the New Testament yesterday, so we are back in the Old Testament. Exodus 17:18, 2 Chronicles 3:4, Revelations 3:4, Psalm 141 to 144, and Proverbs 21. So I've noticed that yesterday I had a little trouble with my video. It appears that as long as you're talking about the Old Testament or the prophetic books, everything is fine. But the minute you talk about Jesus, people on TikTok don't like that very much. So it seems like that video was shadow banned at first, and then it was pulled, and it was under review, and then it was finally released. And it was just about the end times. And I am not a biblical scholar, so it's kind of crazy. So that's why I'm encouraging everybody to be sure and expand, to preserve your videos. I'm suggesting that all the Christian TikTok creators are putting their stuff out on YouTube, or I'm also using Rumble. So nothing is monetized. So any of you that go there, I'm not trying to make money or do anything like that. I'm just trying to get out the word, and I feel like our season is short. I feel like even on YouTube, it's going to be shut down pretty soon. But supposedly Rumble will be the last man standing. Rumble says that they're not going to give in to pressure, so we shall see. Okay, so today we are back in 2 Chronicles, and we're following Solomon, and chapter 3-4 begins the building of the temple. So this is really thick stuff, and and goes into a lot of detail that this is where a study Bible is absolutely invaluable. So I'm going to go through as much as I can with this, but I would encourage you to get a study Bible and read this. There are people who do entire research, detailed breakdown on the temple and what it all represents and how it all works. So I would encourage you to look up some of those videos, because I'm just going to be able to touch on this, and there's so much depth here in the building of the temple, and how it all works. So I would encourage you guys to really, first of all, get a study Bible, and then also research out some videos, some people who do this professionally that can really break it down for you guys, because it's very interesting. And like I always say, there's a purpose for everything, right? So if God is giving specific instructions on how to do something and how to build the place where they're going to worship Him, there's reasons for that, okay? So what we see right at the beginning is verse 3. It talks about, now Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David at the place that David had prepared on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And he began to build on the second day of the second month in the 4th year of his reign. So you remember the story of Ornan the Jebusite? That story just cracked me up. How when the angel of the Lord appeared there, Ornan, all of his sons hid, but he just kept threshing grain. So anyways, that's a funny story. So anyways, you see there, and so then it goes on to describe in the study Bible. Let me just read to you what it says, just about that one little section. It says, Mount Moriah was sacred and therefore an appropriate place for the temple, not only because of the threshing floor of Onan was there, but also because it was the land of Moriah, to which Abraham took Isaac for sacrifice. That's in Genesis 22:2. David had received explicit instructions from the Lord that the very site that he had purchased from Ornan and where he had already built an altar should be the location of the future temple. And that's in 1 Chronicles 21:18 and 26. Mount Moriah is known today as the Temple Mount, and the site of the Muslim Dome of the Rock. It is a hill directly north of Mount Zion, the location of David's tabernacle. So, so that's a lot of detail there. And so then we've got in, so then it goes on to describe the site of the foundation, how big it is. It says, this is the foundation which Solomon laid for the building of the house of God. The length was 60 cubits by cubits according to the former measure, and the width 20 cubits. And the vestibule that was in front of the sanctuary was 20 cubits long across the width of the house, and the height was 120. He overlaid the inside with pure gold. The larger room he paneled with cypress, which he overlaid with fine gold, and he carved palm trees and chainwork on it. So it goes on to describe how all the decorations and those all mean things as well. So that's important, again, to get a study Bible and to look into this a little bit more. But as far as the size, let me give you some information here. In the study Bible, when it says about how big it is, it says The temple foundation was about 90 feet long and 30 feet wide. The Mosaic tabernacle was 45 feet long and 15 feet wide. Now remember, the Mosaic tabernacle they're referring to is in Exodus 26. It goes all the way through to the 30s, the high 30s, as far as building the tabernacle in the wilderness that Moses used when they were in the wilderness. And that was just like I say, the earth is the shadow of heaven. Well, the tabernacle is the shadow of the temple, right? So now they're preparing and building the temple, but the tabernacle was something that they used in the wilderness when they were escaping from Egypt and coming into the land of promise. And so its function and the way it was built was similar to how this is built, but it was done in such a way that they could tear it down and just move it while they were moving. Oh my gosh, I'm only in like verse 3. And then it says, then it just goes on to describe all of the gold. There was a ton of gold used in building the temple. Then it talks about the most holy place. Now it's interesting, the most holy place, if you find a good teacher on this topic, they'll talk about, one of the studies that I heard described how when the priest would go into the most holy place, I believe it was just once a year, and because God's presence was in there, and because God had struck down one of the priests because they had brought in profane fire that was not ordained by God, they actually put little bells and pomegranates on the bottom of the robe of the priest. And as long as the people outside could hear the pomegranates and the tinkling of the bells, they knew that the priest was alive and that everything was going well. And supposedly that was done so that in case there was some kind of an instance, right? So there's a lot of interesting stuff about this. And then it says, let me see, it goes on to describe the weight of the nails being covered in gold. And then it describes the cherubim that they created to put over the Ark of the Covenant, how they describe what they look like and the way they faced. Describes the veil. Now remember, when Jesus died, it was the veil that was torn, right? And so in here it's describing the veil that's separating the most holy place from the holy place. And only the priest could go in there, like I said, once a year. But when Christ died, the veil was torn. So we have the ability now to go into the most holy place, right? And God actually dwells within us. We're also called the temple of God. It's so deep. There's so much you could talk about. Okay, and then it says, then it's interesting because it's describing the different things as they made them. And then two of the things that they made were these giant pillars that they set before the out in the temple. And let me see what it says. They called them Jachin and Boaz. And it says the names Jachin and Boaz means he establishes, and the other one means in him is strength. Thus the two pillars were constant reminders of the presence and the power of God. Another interesting thing that it shows in here is in the tabernacle, when they were traveling, they had something called the sea that the priests would cleanse themselves in before they would go in and perform their functions. Excuse me, but of course in the tabernacle, because they were moving constantly, it was small. So here you see the sea that was created for the temple. It says the sea was a receptacle for water corresponding to the much smaller bronze laver of the Mosaic tabernacle in Exodus 30. That laver provided water for the priests to wash their hands and feet in preparation for ministering at the altar. The sea served the same purpose. It was huge, 15 feet in diameter and 45 feet in circumference. Then it goes on to describe what the sea was very heavy even when empty. When filled with 3,000 baths, that's about 27,000 gallons of water. I'm about to lose time here. And it would have weighed about 110 tons. So that was where the priests would go in and bathe themselves and cleanse themselves before they go into the presence of God. Okay, so I have lost time, but I would encourage you, I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'm not going to do a separate one on chapter 4, but I would encourage you to look into that and truly find someone on the internet that does a Bible study on the temple, because it's super interesting about how all the different things work and what they mean. Okay, Jesus is coming. Read your Bible. Love you. Have a great day. Bye.